The rain did not fall gently that evening. It came down hard, cold, and relentless, like the city itself had finally decided to show Daniel Carter exactly how little mercy it had left for him. Daniel stood under the flickering streetlight, shifting his weight from one aching foot to the other. His jacket, once navy blue, had faded into a tired gray, the seams frayed at the cuffs. Water soaked through the fabric and clung to his skin, but he barely noticed. His focus was on the small hand wrapped tightly in his own. "Daddy," Lily said softly, tilting her head back to look up at him. Raindrops dotted her curls like tiny crystals. "Are we late?" Daniel forced a smile and crouched down so he was eye level with her. "No, Peanut, we're right on time." It was a lie, but it was a kind one. Daniel had learned that lies like these were sometimes necessary to keep a child's world from cracking too early. They began walking again, their footsteps echoing against wet pavement. Lily skipped over puddles, pretending they were islands surrounded by shark-infested waters. Daniel watched her with a mix of pride and pain. She had inherited her mother's imagination, and her courage. Her mother. The thought hit him like a punch to the chest. 3 years had passed since Emma died, but some nights it felt like 3 minutes. Cancer didn't care that Emma was young or kind or that she sang lullabies off-key to make Lily laugh. It came, it took, and it left Daniel holding a tiny hand and a future he wasn't sure he was strong enough to face. Yet here he was, still standing, still trying. They reached the apartment building, a concrete block wedged between a pawnshop and a closed-down laundromat. The hallway smelled of damp carpet and old paint. The elevator had been broken for months, so they climbed the stairs, Lily counting each step out loud like it was a game. 27, 28, 29, she cheered as they reached the 3rd floor. Daniel unlocked the door to apartment 3B. Inside, the lights flickered before settling into a dim yellow glow. The place was small, just a bedroom, a living area, and a kitchen that barely fit one person at a time. A crack ran down the wall like a scar that never healed. The heater rattled loudly, then went silent. Daniel set down the cardboard box he'd been carrying. Inside were his last possessions from the cafe where he used to work. An apron, a chipped mug with his name written in marker, and a framed photo of the staff taken on better days. Lily took off her shoes and ran to the couch. "Daddy, can we have noodles tonight?" Daniel hesitated for half a second. Of course. Another lie, but this one he hoped he could still make true. While the water heated, Lily colored at the small table, humming to herself. Daniel leaned against the counter, staring at the cupboard. Half empty. Again, he rubbed his face with his hands. 2 months ago, life had still made sense. He had a job, a routine, a plan, fragile, maybe, but a plan nonetheless. Then the cafe closed overnight. No warning, no severance, just a locked door and a handwritten sign that read sorry. Sorry didn't pay rent. Sorry didn't buy groceries. Sorry didn't explain how he was supposed to raise a child alone. Dinner was quiet but warm. Lily slurped noodles happily, unaware that Daniel hadn't eaten since yesterday. He told her he'd already eaten at work. She believed him. Afterward, Daniel read Lily her favorite bedtime story, the one about a brave little bird who learned to fly despite having a broken wing. Lily curled up beside him, eyelids drooping. "Daddy," she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you tired?" Daniel brushed her hair back gently. "A little. You work really hard," she said sleepily. "When I grow up, I'll buy you a big house so you don't have to be tired anymore." His throat tightened. "I don't need a big house. I just need you." She smiled and fell asleep moments later. Daniel sat there long after her breathing evened out, staring at the wall. The silence was loud, his thoughts louder. He moved to the window and looked out at the city skyline. Towers of glass and steel glowed against the night sky, symbols of wealth, ambition, and everything that felt impossibly out of reach. Somewhere out there, people were drinking wine that cost more than his monthly rent. Somewhere out there, decisions were being made that could ruin or save lives without anyone noticing. And here he was, counting coins and praying the landlord wouldn't knock tomorrow. "Tomorrow will be better," he whispered, though the words felt thin. Morning came too fast. Daniel woke before his alarm, heart already racing. Lily slept peacefully, clutching her stuffed rabbit. He stood there for a moment, memorizing the scene like he always did, just in case life ever tried to take it away. After walking Lily to school, Daniel headed downtown with a folder of resumes under his arm. The streets were alive with motion, honking cars, rushing feet, voices blending into a constant hum. He stopped at every "help wanted" sign. Cafes, stores, construction sites, offices, overqualified, underqualified, we'll call you. No one ever did. By noon, his legs ached and his stomach growled angrily. He sat on a bench across from a towering glass building that reflected the sky like a mirror. Men and women in tailored suits passed by, eyes glued to phones, conversations about stocks and meetings floating past him like another language. Daniel wondered what it felt like to wake up without fear. He stood to leave when a sudden commotion broke the rhythm of the street. A man stumbled near the entrance of the building, clutching his chest. His briefcase hit the ground first. Then he did. People stopped. Phones came out. Whispers spread. But no one stepped forward. Daniel didn't think. He ran. "Sir," he called, kneeling beside the man. The stranger was pale, his breathing shallow, his expensive coat soaked from the rain that had started again. "Can you hear me?" Daniel asked urgently. The man's eyes fluttered open for a moment. "My heart," he murmured. Daniel raised his voice. "Someone call an ambulance." A few people hesitated, then finally someone dialed. Daniel loosened the man's tie, remembering what little first aid training he'd had years ago. He stayed calm, even though his own heart pounded like a drum. "Stay with me," Daniel said, gripping the man's hand. "Help is coming." The man's fingers tightened weakly. "My briefcase." Daniel glanced at it, lying just inches away. "It's right here. Don't worry about that. Just breathe." Time stretched. Rain soaked Daniel's clothes again, but he didn't move. He talked, about his daughter, about the weather, about anything that might keep the man anchored to the world. Finally, sirens cut through the noise. Paramedics rushed in, lifting the man onto a stretcher. As they prepared to load him into the ambulance, the man grabbed Daniel's wrist with surprising strength. "You didn't have to stop," he said hoarsely. Daniel met his eyes. "Yes, I did." The ambulance doors slammed shut. Daniel stood there as the crowd slowly dispersed, the street returning to its usual indifference. He picked up his damp folder of resumes and walked away, unaware that the man he had saved was a billionaire, or that this single, ordinary act of kindness was about to rewrite both of their destinies. The rain continued to fall. But for the first time in a long while, Daniel felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Hope. Chapter 2. 3 days passed after the incident on the sidewalk, and life returned to its familiar rhythm of struggle for Daniel Carter. Or at least, it seemed to. The landlord knocked twice that morning, harder than usual. Daniel stood on the other side of the door, heart racing, rehearsing apologies he'd already used too many times. "I'll have it soon," Daniel promised when the door finally opened. "I just need a little more time." The landlord sighed, irritation etched into his face. "You've said that before, Daniel. I can't keep waiting." "I know," Daniel said quietly. "I'm trying." The door closed. The silence felt heavier than shouting ever could. Daniel sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. Lily was at school. He was grateful she didn't have to hear the conversation. Children remembered more than adults realized. Just as he stood to grab his jacket and head out again, a low, unfamiliar sound rolled through the narrow street outside. An engine, smooth, powerful, expensive. Daniel looked out the window. A black luxury sedan had pulled up in front of the building. Two men stepped out, both in tailored suits, their movements calm and precise. They looked painfully out of place in the worn-down neighborhood. A knock followed. Daniel opened the door cautiously. "Mr. Daniel Carter," one of the men asked politely. "Yes, we'd like you to come with us." Daniel's pulse spiked. "Why?" The second man smiled faintly. "Because you saved a life." The ride across the city felt unreal. Daniel sat stiffly in the back seat, hands folded in his lap, watching the scenery change, from cracked sidewalks and graffiti-covered walls to pristine streets and glass towers. The car stopped at a private hospital surrounded by manicured gardens. Inside, everything smelled clean and calm, like fear didn't belong there. They led him to a private room larger than Daniel's entire apartment. The man from the sidewalk sat upright in bed, looking nothing like the fragile figure Daniel remembered. His eyes were sharp, calculating, but softened when they landed on Daniel. "Mr. Carter," the man said. "Please, sit." Daniel hesitated before taking the chair. "I'm not sure why I'm here." The man studied him for a long moment. "My name is Victor Hale." Daniel froze. Everyone knew that name. Victor Hale, the billionaire tech magnate. The man whose companies touched everything from medicine to transportation. The man whose net worth was discussed like myth. "I collapsed that day," Victor continued, "because my heart is failing. The doctors confirmed it after the incident. I have a terminal condition." Daniel swallowed. "I'm sorry." Victor waved a hand dismissively. "Don't be. I've had a long life. A powerful one. But power," he said quietly, "is a poor companion when death arrives." Victor leaned forward. "When I lay there on the pavement, surrounded by people who wouldn't even kneel beside me, I understood something. My wealth made people stare, but it didn't make them care." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't do it for money." "I know," Victor said. "That's why you're here." Over the following weeks, Victor requested Daniel's presence often. At first, Daniel thought it was some kind of misunderstanding. But Victor insisted, on conversations, on lunches, on walks through the hospital garden. They talked about everything. Daniel spoke about Lily, about Emma, about the exhaustion of being both mother and father. He spoke about guilt, about always feeling like he wasn't doing enough. Victor listened. In return, Victor spoke of boardrooms and battles, of building an empire from nothing and losing pieces of himself along the way. He spoke of relationships sacrificed for success, of people who loved his money more than they ever loved him. "I built walls everywhere," Victor admitted one afternoon. "High enough that nothing could get in. Including joy." Daniel frowned. "Why didn't you stop?" Victor laughed softly. "Because I didn't know how." Then came the changes. Daniel's debts disappeared, quietly, efficiently. His rent was paid 6 months in advance. Lily received a scholarship offer from a private school Daniel couldn't have dreamed of affording. But Victor never framed it as charity. "You're not a project," Victor told him firmly. "You're a man who showed me who I used to be before the world hardened me." As Victor's health declined, their bond deepened. Lily visited sometimes, bringing drawings and shy smiles that somehow made Victor look younger. One afternoon, Victor asked Daniel to stay after Lily left. "I've made a decision," Victor said, his voice steady but heavy. Daniel felt a strange chill. "About what?" "My will." Daniel stiffened. "Sir, I have no children. No family who hasn't already taken their share," Victor said. "I've spent my life collecting things I can't take with me." Victor slid a sealed envelope across the table. "I'm leaving everything to you." Daniel stared at it, unable to breathe. That's impossible." "It's done," Victor said calmly. "But there is one condition." Daniel looked up. "Anything. Don't let this money turn you into me." Silence stretched between them. "I don't want statues or buildings with my name on them," Victor continued. "I want something harder. I want my fortune to become a second chance for people who never get one." Tears blurred Daniel's vision. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this." Victor smiled gently. "You already are. You just never had the resources to prove it." Victor Hale passed away on a quiet morning, sunlight spilling softly into the room. Daniel stood beside the bed, holding Victor's hand until the end. The news exploded across the world. Headlines screamed. Analysts speculated. Lawsuits threatened. A poor single father named sole heir to billion-dollar empire. People expected scandal, greed, collapse. They were wrong. Daniel honored Victor's final wish with unwavering resolve. He didn't buy mansions or yachts. He invested in shelters, rebuilt struggling neighborhoods, funded education programs, and created healthcare initiatives for families like his once was. He hired people no one else would. Single parents, former inmates, the forgotten. Years later, Daniel stood on the steps of a community center bearing no billionaire's name. Lily stood beside him, taller now, confident, strong. "Daddy," she asked, "do you ever miss being poor?" Daniel smiled thoughtfully. "I miss understanding how little it takes to be rich." She laughed. "We're lucky, aren't we?" Daniel looked at the people gathered below, faces filled with hope instead of fear. "Yes," he said softly. "We are." Somewhere beyond the noise of the world, Victor Hale's unusual fate had fulfilled its purpose. Not in billions, but in lives changed. End.